In this video clip, we're going to take an Access database and use Visual Studio and create a database-driven web page. So let's just take a quick look at our database. We have the dogs database. I'll click on this. We created this from a previous video clip, and just to kind of show you what it looks like, we have 4 tables, right? We have the kennel table, the puppy table, puppy tricks, and trick. And it might be good if we just take a look at the relationships, so we can see that a kennel, right, can have 1 or more puppies, and a puppy can do 1 or more tricks, and a trick can be done by 1 or more puppies. So this is our relationships, or one-to-many relationships here. You can see some of the other fields that we have involved in each table. Okay. Outside of that, let's take a look at some of the records real quick. We have the kennel table, we have the puppy table, we have the puppy tricks table, and the trick table. All right. So what we'll do initially here is let's create a web page that will add kennels. So if we want to add a kennel to our kennel table and list the kennels as well. So let's take a look at how to do that. Okay, so let's X out of the database, and we'll go into Visual Studio, right? And we'll create another project. I already created a folder for this. So we'll do a new website. In so many cases, you might want to create a new project, create a solution file. What we'll do here is we'll just create a new website for right now. But ideally, I guess you would want to create a new project, and you can have many websites as part of that solution or part of that project. But let's do, we'll do the shortcut method. We'll just do a website here. And it's going to ask us where do we want to put the website. Okay, and we're going to make sure it's the version 4 of the framework, empty website, C#, and now I have to browse to find out where I want to put it. So I have a flash drive connected here, and I'm going to connect to one of the folders there. So let's just see, I'm going to go to video examples and so we'll create this one. All right, I'll click OK. And Studio will set it up for us. The other thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a special folder. Studio recognizes, has special folders. One of them is, let me right click and get this for you. It's going to be the app data folder. So if I want to do a new folder, this is a special ASP.NET folder called app data. And that's where we're going to store our database. So we create our folder, and then we right click, and then we need to bring in our database. So I've already created that. So I'm going to add an existing item. It already exists. And I'll bring it, I got to find it right now. It's actually in the other folder here. So I'm going to click on dogs, right? Dogs ACDB, and put that in there. And now we have our database inside our Studio project. Well, in a second we will. Now, when we connect to this, there's a technology called ADO.NET, and that's a technology that will let us connect to various databases. We're just using Access, but what we're doing here, you could apply to SQL Server, Oracle, MySQL as well. So let's right-click on the root and create a new web page. So I'll do a new item. And normally it would be default, but why don't we choose, this is kennels. So I'll just choose kennels for right now, right? We're going to do something with the kennels page, and we'll click Add. And then once it comes in, right, we'll set up a table to organize it. We'll just put this in here a little bit. We'll clean it up. This is the kennels page. And typically we would design it a little bit better than this, but for our purposes, for time reasons, we'll just set it up this way. So we'll put a table in, right? Real quick, table, HTML tags for table, and set this in here. And all we want to do first is, let's just say this is the kennel name, right? Colon, and we need a text box that will allow us to enter the kennel name. So let's get that out of the standard toolbox. Let's close some of this stuff up, right? And go to the standard, and we need a text box. Let's find that. Here it is. Drag that over. Oops, I need my TD tags. So let's bring the TD tags in. Okay, tight. And then we can paste this text box inside there, cut it out, put it inside. Maybe I'll just bring it in like this. All right, and instead of calling it text box 1, why don't we call it kennel name, right? So that's the first row. Let's repeat this row, and now we need the kennel location, right? I think that was the other field in the kennel table location. Right, and then we'll call this text box kennel location. Right. So there we go. Now the next thing we need is a button that we can use to add the data. So why don't we create another row there? I'll just paste this in again. This time we don't really need 2 columns, just 1. So I'll get rid of this one, and we'll just say this spans 2 columns, right? Col span equals 2. That will span 2 columns. And instead of a text box, we need a button. So let's get rid of the text box. Bring a button over, right? And here we go, right there. Bring the button in. And we'll call this button add. And on the just on the text property, we'll just say add kennel. All right. Okay, so there we go. And now if we were to preview this, it wouldn't really look like much. We can click on Design View and see what it looks like. So there you go. Oops. Got to the button here. It didn't show up. Make sure we have it. Button add, text, add kennel. Oh, forgot my other quote here. There we go. Okay, now take another look. There it goes. All right, so we have our form. Now what we need to do is we need to add a data control. And I'm going to do this outside of the div block, inside the form tag, but outside the div block. This is not going to show up on the web page. So I go down to the data section in my toolbox. And normally what I would usually do is use the SQL data source. But since we're using the 2010 version of Access, I'm going to use the Access data source. But it pretty much is, it's very similar. The things we're going to do if you were to connect to SQL Server or Oracle or MySQL, you could use SQL data source. So let's drag this over, and I'm just going to abbreviate it as ADS and underscore kennels. I usually name it the same name as the table, right, that I'm going to use. So there's several ways you can do this. I'm going to save this here, make sure the asterisk is gone, and then click on Design. And this, click on the Smart tag, and what we're going to do is configure the data source to point to our database. So I'll click on that, and we need to give it a path. So I'm going to browse for the database. It's in the App Data folder. There it is, right? And oops, click on that, and then say OK. Click on OK. There's our access path. Click on Next. The next thing it's going to do is, oops, let me go back. It's going to ask us, click too fast. It's going to ask us which table do we want to select data from or use in this with this data source. And it will also show us any queries we have in the database as well. We want the kennel table, all right? And it will show us all the fields currently in the kennel table. Kennel code is going to be generated by the database, right? Access or SQL Server, they have ways of auto-numbering rows when you add them in there, but we're going to select that anyway. And look, it starts to build our SQL statement here if we want to select data from the database. Okay. Now, I'm going to order this, so if I display it, I'm going to order this by kennel name, so we can just sort it that way. And I can click on Advanced, and I can automatically generate the insert, update, and delete statements for me, SQL statements. And we'll come back to this maybe another time, but you could also check this if you're worried about concurrency problems. All right, and now click on Next. We can test our query to make sure it queries the database. And it looks like it's connected, and the SQL did work. Look, it's sorted by kennel name, right? And we'll click on Finish. So now we have a data source that's connected to our database over here. Okay. The next thing we have to do is modify our insert statement so that the data will be inserted. So let me click on the data source, and over here in the Properties window, if you scroll down, you'll see that there is a Insert Query property. If I click on the 3 dots over here, I can modify this query. So what we have are parameters that can be passed in, right, from the form to update the database or to add data to the database. So the insert statement is insert into kennel, that's the table name, and these are the fields that we're going to try to populate or to put into the, for the record that's going to go into the kennel table. Now the thing of it is, we know that kennel code from a previous video is an auto number field in Access, meaning that Access will automatically generate that for us. So I'm not going to use that, so I need to get rid of that. And because I do, I have to get rid of the positional parameter that's associated with it. So I take away one question mark. So you have to make sure that your you don't have an extra comma at the end or a comma at the beginning, right? That would screw it up. The other thing I need to do then is also delete it from my list of parameters, because these question marks correspond to the parameters. So I would X out that. Okay. So now this is all positional, right? Name to name, location to location, and each question mark applies. The next thing is, well, where is this data going to come from to get into the database? What's coming from the form, right? The user is going to type it in right here in the text box. So the parameter source is a control, a data control. In this case, it's a text box. And Studio knows that, you know, when you click on this list drop down, it finds all the controls on your page that would apply. In this case, it would be the kennel name, right? The text box for kennel name is going to apply here, the kennel name. And whatever's typed in there will fill in that positional parameter and then be inserted into the database. So we do the same thing here with location. It'll be a control, and it's going to be the kennel location. And then we click OK. Right? And now we've associated that, you know, we set up our insert statement basically. We have one more thing left, and that is when we click on the button, we want to make sure it goes in the database. So if I double click on the button, right, it'll put me into the button click event in the C# code. Okay, right in here in the C# code. And I could use a try catch, but we'll just make it simple right now, and we'll just do ADS kennel. The IntelliSense should find it. Dot insert. Okay, left and right parens semicolon. All right, and then if I save it, all right, and do let's preview this in the browser and see what happens. Server comes up. It says modify. Yes, we'll let that happen. It's going to change it so that we can enable debugging, and that's fine. First time through, we'll do that. And hopefully it comes up here. There we go. Oops. So here is our form. A little slow today. Come on, here we go. And we'll enter a name of a kennel in there, and then what we'll do is we'll look at it. We'll go back to the database and I can look at it. So kennel name, I'm going to say ABC Kennels. Right. And the location, let's just say is Westminster. And I click Add Kennel. Now we didn't put a message out there saying that it would work or that it's been done, and we could have done that, but now it's been added supposedly, so it's check. I'll X out of this, and we also have a Server Explorer over here. So if I can click over here, click on my form, I should be able to view. Actually, if I don't see it, where's my view? View, is it here? View, Server Explorer. Is it in this one? Server Explorer. Okay. So now with Server Explorer, I have my toolbox in Server Explorer. I can take a look at my tables over here. I'll look at the kennel table, and I can see the outline of the table or see the fields that are in the table. I can also right-click and retrieve the data. And what's it going to show me? Oh, there's an error in the code. Okay, reader is closed. Well, typically you could do that. I'm not sure if I have my configuration set up correct for that. I guess worst case, we can double-click on this and see if we can come up that way. Now it's just going to bring it over here. It should let us retrieve the data. It's not letting us do that. Let's go outside the database. I'll have to figure out what that is later, but if we go outside the database and look at my, just go right to the folder where the table is. Let's just see what's in there. Okay, and in the kennel table, ABC Kennels, it was added. So I have a configuration problem I have to deal with it with Studio. So I'll see if I can get that fixed for the next video. But it did add it. So that's basically how you can add a record to a table using Studio. We'll look at how to display records in another video.